and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist.
Well, good morning. It's a Monday again, and ready for the week. And it looks as if it might be a tough one. We've got the old Brexit thing bubbling around again, getting closer to some sort of deadline, and now talks of delay and new votes and so on and so forth. Not worth us taking the time to go into, but nonetheless, it is there, and we have to be aware of it. Olivia Colman takes the Oscar. Pretty damn good. I can remember way back when she first appeared on the television program. I've forgotten its name now, but it was a murder show, and I must say that I was very impressed with her acting then, and it's taken her to the top. God bless her, best actress at the Oscars. So we bring home the British flag again. We do pretty well, I think, in the arts scene. If only we could bring that to politics. Oh, don't let me encourage actors to get involved in politics, though. That's the very worst thing. Right, 3 or 4 things that I'd like to mention this morning, not least of which is the mild weather supposedly is coming to the end, and some people, again, are predicting snow. Not unusual to get snow at the end of February and the beginning of March here. In fact, sometimes right through March. So let's hold our breath. If you are somebody who likes snow and goes frolicking in it, and you don't have to go very far, great. If you have to go to London, of course, on the train or the roads or whatever, you're not so happy. Although I think we all would say that in environmental terms, as it were, snow falling for the first time is really very pretty and very heartwarming, no matter what the consequences. Okay, I'm Keith Hayes. This is Mirador Television, and I hope that you'll stay with us for a few minutes anyway, as we chat. We're here really to chat about local things, but as they really impinge upon either the national scene or the national scene impinges upon us. And one of the things that I was involved in heavy discussion with those people who know over the weekend, and I say those people who know because I'm a very typical journalist. I come from a position of ignorance. I listen and I form an opinion. I don't actually profess to be an expert of any sort. In fact, most journalists are, what's the phrase, experts in everything and masters of none. Something like that, anyway. But I'm not a master of anything particularly, but I do talk to a lot of people, and I think that I get a fairly widespread picture of what's going on. One thing that is of interest is that what's happened here in Lewes and Eastbourne, where we've got one executive and 2 sets of elected officials, 2 councils, is happening in other parts of the country too. In fact, the authorities can't wait to rush towards it. But 2 issues arise. First of all, who's in charge of the executive? And if in fact the 2 councils are in charge of the executive, how do they actually resolve that? I mean, that's a very interesting situation. Who's the boss? And if they say that the executive is the boss, that's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Because they're not elected. That smacks of one of the criticisms of the EU, that we're run by unelected officials. And I begin to suspect that perhaps we are. So the question has got to be, if you're going to devolve, as it were, and have bigger areas on a local level, who actually is in charge? You really need only one council, don't you? So is the next move to have an Eastbourne and Lewis council? Well, I mean, we have to ask the question, because it seems to me that all the things that are going wrong with the executive at the moment are all the things that are wrong with that sort of merger. First of all, it's simply not working. And secondly, if you've got two sets of bosses, who are you going to believe? Who are you going to follow? They will both have two separate sets of interests. And that is fairly obvious from the poll that we took last week. And we're actually analysing the results. They weren't huge, but we got a couple of hundred people who took part, and it was interesting because right down the middle, in terms of those who want and those who don't, about 50-50. But it was interesting where the replies came from, and we just want to make sure that we get it right. But anyway, that was the first initial results, as they say, because ours was not a definitive poll by any means. Just simply asking people who watch us or who read the little note that we sent out. And one of the things that we really have to be very careful about is that we don't overdo the emphasis or the importance of these polls, because they are straw polls. But nonetheless, they give some interesting insights. So back to, are we right in merging executives, probably eventually merging councils? One of the great things about the British Constitution, and of course we are a constitutional monarchy really without a constitution. Our constitution, if you want to call it that, is mostly unwritten. It goes on precedent. It goes on past bills of rights, which were formed many years ago. And when I say that, I'm not talking about 50, I'm talking about 500. And all in all, those freedoms that we have are based a lot on precedent, a lot on laws, a lot on things that were written at a time when men, women, humans in this country were busy making sure that the divine right of kings didn't carry on, and that the people had their say. It took time to develop. Dear old Tom Paine did his very best before going off to the United States and stirring up trouble there. Stirring up trouble, it depends on which point of view you take. But the fact is that we have been a freedom-loving nation, and we have had a lot of personal freedom. For instance, Napoleonic law, on which much of continental law is based, presumes that you're guilty until you show your innocence. We, on the other hand, say we presume that you're innocent until somebody proves you guilty. So that's the sort of flip of the coin that we've had here, and those sort of freedoms. And some experts are pointing out that those sort of freedoms will disappear bit by bit if, in fact, we enlarge our local councils. Because the whole idea of a local council is that they are looking after our interests, the people within that district, and that we are able to converse with them and make our views known and have them passed on. Well, the bigger they get, the less that's going to happen. I mean, do you really know, if you live in Lewis, what's happening in Eastbourne? Do you know in Eastbourne, if you live there, what's happening in Lewis? Not really. So the bigger they get, the less freedom that we have to make sure that our wishes are taken into consideration when decisions are made by our local council. And there are some notable ones recently where that has been obviously lacking. The other thing is that some people are challenging the constitutional nature of these breakups or these mergers on that very basis that the English Constitution, which is unwritten, it really indicates that smaller groups should exist in order to allow the citizen to have a say, have an involvement, and know and be represented in what's going on in his or her area. Is it constitutional? Is it unconstitutional? What's happened at the moment? Because it hasn't been a merger of councils, it's been a merger of the executive. But I think we're all very foolish if we think that it's not the executive that runs the districts. So, worthy questions, and ones for which I will seek some answers over the next few days in talking to those people who would know much better than I whether, in fact, it infringes the Constitution. One point that was made, though, and that is that we still have in this country the freedom to say what we like. As long as we stay within the law, as long as we don't libel or slander, we can say what we like. And that is a freedom that I hold very dear, as you can tell. But it's also a freedom that we should all hold very dear. And if that's being eroded, and I fear that to some extent that the might of the state may be interfering in that, if that's being eroded, then indeed a huge freedom is under threat. A huge freedom is being taken away from us. Just a few thoughts on local government and whether, in fact, mergers are a good thing. We did a survey on it was a straw poll, but we did a survey on the new super highway that is being mooted between Lewis and Eastbourne and beyond. And it is interesting that as many people were for it, as many people as against it, and it did tend to fall into areas. But it is interesting to see who responded, who from Lewis, who from Eastbourne, who from some of the other areas that will be affected. And we will do that analysis, and we'll bring that to you tomorrow or the next day. Certainly we'll take a look over the week, because there's one thing is, okay, not everybody saw that survey, and why should they? But if you did and you ignored it, then the fact is, ask yourself whether when things happen you get involved in local government, because pushing a button on a telephone or on a computer doesn't take much effort. If you can't make that much effort, should you really be surprised when things happen that you don't approve of, that you never bother to get involved? Now, we're also putting out another survey. You can find it on Facebook, but we'll put it out far more in the next few days, which asks about 6 or 7 questions about how you feel about local government. And the questions really are asking about efficiency, effectiveness, are they doing the job properly, and so on and so forth. And I would urge you, if you can, to just take the moment or two to fill that in as well and send it back to us, because it is interesting to know what you think of the local government. You don't have to ask what I think. I'm very vocal in my criticisms. And in fact, one of my good friends who actually, I'm happy to say that among my friends and acquaintances, I've got lots of people who we all disagree on a whole host of things, but our friendship is strong enough for us to be able to disagree, and that's really what a democracy is all about, thank goodness. But one of my friends said, are you being too hard on Lewis Council, because you really are always poking at them? But the fact of the matter is that as a journalist, I am quite happy to give the writer reply. I've written at least 6 requests for information now to the local government, and I haven't had one reply back. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, is if they don't want to argue the point, then I suppose that what they're doing is acquiescing. And some of the things that I say, they must admit to. Well, they'll never admit to it. But they don't fight. They don't answer. And if they want that sort of right, then they had better respond to that responsibility. But they don't seem to have anybody in charge of the media in our local district council. It's a bit sad, really, that they should take that attitude, because that shows a little bit of an offhand approach to the people who employ them. After all, they are public servants, quote. Now, I've almost run out of time with this morning, so do look at the survey. Is there anything else? Oh, yes, Aldi, locally, Aldi, I see, from the Sussex Express, is giving away food to local charities. and good for Aldi. When they first came in, people sneered at them. I've been going to Aldi almost ever since they opened. Good prices, good range of food, good quality. And the people sneered at it. Now you can barely get in because of those people who have, quote, discovered it. It's a good store. It does quality food. It has quality service. You have to do a bit yourself. You're not pampered as you are in some other stores. But all in all, a good store, and serves the public well. And now it's giving its extra food, that which is left over and it can't sell, to charity. So there we are. A very good morning to you. I'm going upstairs now to the radio studio. Do join me in 3 or 4 minutes. Sorry we're always on the air late with the radio, but it's because I'm so busy ranting with television. Till tomorrow, and a bit more ranting and roaring and getting hot under the collar about things. Toodle pip.
I never